Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts Podcast. This is a solo episode, and we're going to use today to begin a walkthrough of this book here, Franz Bardon's Initiation into Hermetics, which is a really great book, really great system to work through, and offers a lot of potentials to aspiring spiritualists, and also a lot of freedom as well. So the first part of this book is very often overlooked when we're exploring this work. And so we want to jump into that. This is the theory section right at the very, very beginning. And we'll get into all the steps as this particular series of videos goes on. But I thought it might be nice to start at the beginning because the intro to this book acts as almost a type of safety mechanism. And if we really meditate on it and look into it, you'll find that there's a lot of very positive mental frameworks that are laid down and perspective-based freedoms that allow us to navigate the work in a safe way that it prevents a type of supernatural ego from arising when it comes to doing this work, which is very common in the magical type of traditions or any spiritual work that involves using energy for specific purposes. In vague types of spiritual exploration, say from a surrender release standpoint, where you're expanding your consciousness, essentially. There isn't too much emphasis put on immediate, specific use of the work. And when there is a lot of emphasis put on use of the work, the part of us that is using the work is usually, especially in the beginning, not so developed because we haven't done a lot of the work because we just started, but we're learning how to use energy. And the result of this can be a type of cementing of the ego. And there can be a lot of damage that can be done on that front. So when we look at the introduction to this book, it takes care of a lot of that. And we can apply that through all the steps, okay? So this introduction starts with, got my reminders here. The introduction starts with a look into the elements, an exploration of the elements. And the elements being the makeup of everything on the physical and vital planes, on the astral planes, as well as in the emotional relationships within the body, and on the mental planes as well, all as coming from the elements. Okay, now as people progress on the path and move through the elements, and then are either tapping in through their own accord or are gifted through transmission, direct relationship with light, it can be very, very easy to forget the importance of the elements and the nature of the elements. As such, they move through everything at each layer of the vibrational scale of all the planes is an amalgamation of the elements. So whether you're working with literally the mineral kingdom and stones, or whether you're working cosmically with say constellational or planetary type meditations or Kabbalistic type meditations, letter magic, word magic, etc., this all comes down to a refinement of your understanding of the elements, which comes through your meditative and perceptive capabilities. So this starts with an exploration of the elements, and it looks at them in sort of some depth, some vagueness, but there's a lot of value that can be had in exploring this. So you can start with each of the principles of the elements as this author relates to them, and spend a little time contemplating, meditating on the principles as written of the elements. This doesn't need to be done in a hard sense of sitting down and rigidly focusing on it, but go for a walk and allow the mind to wash over it. Read through. These are very short little, mini chapters there is what they call them. But these little paragraphs, read through it, memorize a few points, go for a walk, and just mull it over. Okay, this is a really nice way to begin at any type of practice, is you just allow the mind to begin to grasp a little bit what it is that you're going to be working with, so that you can let go and allow more of that information to start percolating and flowing through. Okay, so this starts with an exploration of each of the elements, fire, air, water, and earth, as well as the akasha or the ether. Okay, now the akasha is really this is the real interesting one. Well, they're all fascinating, but the akasha is the space, the place, the substance from which all of the other elements comes from. Okay, so as you start to mull over the akasha and this paradox, I call it the akashic paradox, this etheric paradox that is all of everything, as well as everything that was before everything and everything that's after everything. So it is this space in which it's very hard to comprehend. And when we try to impose comprehension on the akasha from the perspective of the formed dualistic mind, it doesn't make sense, or we try to impose meaning. And so we'll take just a tiny portion of what the ether, what the akasha can be, and we go, okay, that's it, that's everything. But it's that and so much more. It's always that and everything else. And this requires a type of mentality that's open and that allows for everything that can be, that is beyond our comprehension, to be, at least to be a potential. Okay, so it is of great ease to the identity to imposed must-be's and this is the only thing that something can be. That is of a great relief to the identity, the egoistic identity, because it provides support, it provides confinement on which we can lean our sense of self. Okay, so this embracing of the unknown becomes very important, and the exploration of the akasha as this fifth element. This is, often referred to, even here, as almost like a God principle, right? And the the all within the all from a Hermetic standpoint. And when you start doing some deep akashic meditation, and there's many ways to get there. When you start doing deep akashic meditations and everything disappears, all the differentiating elemental specifications start to dissolve, and you're just existing in that space of the akasha. There's a perception. You are no longer a thing, and of where we are one with everything, and we know everything. However, when we come out of that akashic state, we go, oh, it's more refined than a dream. It's farther, so much further away. So the exploration of the akasha and familiarity with it allows us to touch in with a greater and greater relationship and ability to return with what we might call like akashic pearls. However, every pearl has now had a form imposed on it, and is we could look at it as a type of a refraction of the truest thing, which is where it exists formlessly. Okay, so lots to explore here. He then looks into, in this book, and the introduction, a very brief exploration of karma, and which is the law of cause and effect. So why is this important? Well, when we start exploring cause and effect, what this does is it allows us to see where our dualistic identity gets pressurized, right? We typically look at karma, good and evil. Do more good, get more good. Do more bad, get more bad. And there is definitely some truth in this, that resonance attracts like resonance. Okay, now when we start looking deeper into the laws of karma, the laws of cause and effect, we start to understand, as the Buddha said, that karma itself, these laws of cause and effect, are so vast as to be incomprehensible. So we have to start looking at karma from the space, essentially, of Akasha, and this provides a doorway into Akasha, the exploration of cause and effect. Okay, because what causes what, right? You get this interplay between duality, where the cause is the effect and the effect is the cause, and they reticulate back and forth, as well as scaling forward in time, scaling back in time, and you get a very innate release of time, a very innate release of space, and a very deep and permeating spiral of understanding as causes, and we will get to this as well in this intro, on the mental plane, causes in the astral planes, causes in the physical, as well as effects, start to be perceived. So we can start to relate in more and more subtle ways to what cause and effect can be. Okay, and again, always exploring this from the place of the question mark, which allows for maximum growth. Okay, and the place of the question mark is that place of the unknown, that place of potential and paradox and the Akasha. So we always end up going back to the Akasha. And the Akasha is always something that, especially in the beginning, we want to impose immediacy of clarity on. But how can you look at clearly everything? Of everything, right? All of everything. So embrace the unknown. Okay, the next thing that is brought to our attention in this introduction is the human body. Okay, the processes of the human body, and the process of the human body as further explorations of the elements. So you can start exploring the elements from the space of the physical body, and there's a lot of value in that. In terms of the electric fluid, the magnetic fluid, looking at the importance of the fiery nature within the human body, the watery nature within the human body, the electric, the magnetic, the interplay between these, which would be the air, and how the electric and magnetic balance and find harmony, the air being to harmony, we could look at it as lawfulness of the body and the energy systems of the body. Okay, and of course the body itself being the expression of the earth element, of all the earth, the water, the fire, or the fire, the air, the waters, as they express through physical manifestation, which would be to the earth. So even in the very, very beginning of this book, before we even get started with any exercises, there's looking at all of the elements as one, as they interplay with each other. And a very common habit when we get started with this work is to impose segmented differentiation onto the elements, and to essentially inhibit in our minds the interplay of the elements. And it's this interplay that allows for deepening relationship to the Akasha that lies behind the elements, to the equanimity potentials and processes. So this interplay of the elements becomes very important, and the exploration of the body here is, it's pretty extensive. Okay, so anyone who has spent a lot of time, and of course, I suggest you read through this yourself. I'm not here to read through the book for you, but any exploration of this will really start to expose potentials of the elements within the body. Okay, so when you start doing stillness practices, say seated meditation or standing practices, if you do these for very extended periods of time, you will have to encounter the pains and lack of harmonies of the body. You will have exposed to you lack of harmonies of the emotional content of the astral bodies and of the mental workings as well. And this comes through the most basic practice, which is sit or stand, just be still and observe. And all kinds of disharmonies will present themselves, typically as types of angst or pain. And so in this book, Bardon looks at offering all of the different body parts locations of the body, separations into electric and magnetic and neutral, essentially. Within all of the elements, you have positive and negative, right? Constructive, destructive, and this is always something to look at. The creative fires, the destructive fires, fires that are the spark of creation, the spark of ingenuity, the spark of forward movement and ability to engage and act out in a way that brings intuition in through mental understandings and forms, in through astral expressions, and bringing a group together or whatever to maybe eventually build something that manifests physically. So all the elements have this positive, negative, this life-giving and life-dissolving, which allows for a deeper understanding of the non-permanence and of life force and other substances as they come into form and are given the shape that we consider to be of life, and then dissolve, and the entropy process takes place, the destructive process, and that life force is allowed to be liberated from its current form, to be subsumed or returned to its various elemental makeups, and then to be pulled forth once again into new forms. So this allows for some pretty interesting explorations and further understandings. And again, this is the introduction to this book, right? Prior to any practices, just contemplate, observe, explore. The exploration of the body itself. There's a million lessons in it, right? Also a Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, as within, as all about. The microcosm of the human being an expression of the macrocosm. And so as we explore the human, this mind, this emotional thing, this body, we start to have illuminated to us an understanding of the macrocosm. And this becomes more and more profound as you continue this exploration. However, if we get stuck into the body is the body, then all the energy, everything we work with will be confined to that. And this can lead us down a whole road of essentially what I see that comes out of it is a very strong ego that deifies the physical body. And of course we want the best functioning body, the best functioning emotional systems, mental systems that we can to allow for maximum growth and expression on this path, maximum evolution. It's very hard for things to adapt and evolve when the physical body is of low energy or low health, when the emotional makeup is a very sort of dark, dense, selfish makeup, and when the perspectives of the mind are locked and rigid. This makes it very difficult to grow. So we want health. We want the best health we can have. So because this allows for the easiest disruption, deformation of our current level on the path, and it allows for the fuel for the reformation process to occur as we evolve to the next layer of exploration. Okay, this can be an energy consuming process because we're going through such vast evolution, and it takes energy for things to be ripped apart, torn asunder, and then reformed to something that is in resonance with higher aims, higher vibration, higher potential. This requires energy and sound, as he mentions in the intro here, sound health, right? To be of sound body, sound mind. This is very important. And this provides a type of, it's a finger pointing. Hey, look into this. What is sound? What does it mean? What is sound health? What is sound body? What is a sound mind? How does sound itself work with this? Why is it that, say, in slightly off topic of this book, but why is it that, say, in Tai Chi they have listening energy, right? What is it about sound, about vibration, that is so important when we start looking at the vibration, the energy content of the mind, the energy content of the body, that can allow for deeper explorations and healthy harmonizations of health of body, of health of mind. So there's all kinds of little little clues in this intro. You look at the words that are used, there's some little clues that can be very interesting to explore. One of them is sound mind and sound body when it comes to especially explorations of health. So Bardon walks through a bunch of different parts of the body, and he offers some insight into whether they might be magnetic, electric, of fire, of water, and or neutral. So I found that sometimes, often this can be the case, but always within the fires you find deeper recesses of waters which offer deeper recesses of the fires. So this is all a place to start, okay? A place to begin an exploration, but by no means needs to be dogmified into absolutes, okay? This is always the sticking point, is as we mentioned already in this video, the longing of the identity of the ego to find and impose absolutes onto understanding so that we can arrest the identity there and feel, okay, I know, I can rest on my knowledge. So we want to be wary of that, okay? So let's see, where do we move on from here? He offers some different explorations of what the ether, the akasha might be in relation to body substance, as well as the other elements. And there's value in exploring that. Again, no need to get too attached to it. Okay, so explorations of diet. This is looked at a couple times in the intro here. I've found personally that diet is something that evolves depending on how attuned you are to your own harmony and health of the body. Also what you're training and what you're exploring. So if you're doing a lot of physical work, life force training and body training, we must have the resources to rebuild. Now, in this day and age, we have access to all kinds of supplements and building blocks, which allows us a little more latitude when it comes to what dietary explorations we're feeling tuned into. So very often in spiritual paths, they will, what might we say? They will sort of deify the like vegetarianism, veganism, the non-taking of animal life. However, when we start to look at this taking of life, and we start to really, through tangible, meditative, deep experience the field of life force, the life force of the earth, the life force in the elements, the types of explorations and amalgamations of life force and how they present themselves astrally, and with astral energies and personalities, all this stuff, it starts to really erode any sense of higher morals when it comes to not eating meat, because you stop seeing the difference, right? You stop putting levels onto what is higher life and what is lower life. When you start to explore the mineral kingdoms, right, you start to explore how minerals, vitamins, the mineral, the stone kingdoms, how all this stuff starts to come together and then be brought into expression in the kingdom above, you get a very different understanding of life. And as you tap into the life force, this gradation starts to dissolve. Okay, you cannot post your morals, your moral identity, your sense of I'm a good personness onto what shape or what shape of life force you are consuming, right? There is the destructive process is occurring. So you have the mineral kingdom, which folds into itself to become the vegetable kingdom. Okay, so through the vegetable kingdom, we are more easily able to intake the mineral kingdom, right? The vegetable kingdom acts as the synthesizer for the mineral and vitamin kingdoms. Okay, this is the next sort of layer up. So through consuming the vegetables, it liberates the mineral kingdoms to be used within the body. Now you move through the next kingdom, the animal kingdoms, they consume the vegetables. Okay, and also consume themselves, depending on, what predatory nature of animal you're thinking of. So it's a synthesizer. The animals synthesize the vegetable kingdom, which is synthesized the mineral kingdom. From the vegetable kingdom, it's also synthesizing essentially sunlight as well. So the vegetable kingdom is very, very fascinating as it draws the minerals up, and it also has this very interesting connection to the sunlight itself, to the rhythms of the moon. And it's a very fascinating doorway into the beginnings of planetary, solar system, and cosmic meditations. Okay, so this is a very interesting thing to explore. The animals then synthesize, in that sense, both the sunlight, the rhythms of the more immediate cosmos, and the mineral kingdoms as well. Okay, so when you start really tapping into tangible explorations through meditative perception, you cannot think of yourself as a better person because of what you eat. Now, different unifications, as you keep exploring this path with different frequencies, will start to alter the desires when it comes to what food is in resonance with that particular frequency you're working with. I have found that the air-based constellational frequencies are the ones that have the strongest resonance with not consuming the products of the animal kingdom. So there is something to do with metabolic processes, with the lightness of the air, and the relationship of the air through the vegetable kingdoms at this lower density of physical matter. Which the vegetable kingdoms, that's the air. That's the kingdoms through which we explore the symbiotic breath. Our exhalation is the inhalation of the vegetable kingdoms. Their exhalation is the inhalation of the human and mammalian kingdoms, right? The animal kingdoms. So there's a very fascinating interplay that occurs there. And so and that relationship between the air and the vegetable kingdoms, there's a lot there. So when working those higher end frequencies from a constellational standpoint of the air element, there seems to be a very strong resonance to eating more purely of just the vegetable kingdoms. This is my own experience with it. Okay, so listening to the body, listening to the energy, listening to the beckonings of the mental, the astral, emotional, the vital, and physical, all of this, when it comes to what frequencies we're tuning ourselves to, there's a lot of lessons here. And again, nothing that needs to be leaned on with the identity. Okay, we will always be coming back to this, not getting stuck with the identity on must be's and has to be's and have to be's, and this is the only ways. These are explorations of the moment, and we cannot adhere to them and still progress when the next thing that presents itself. We have to be open. Okay, so everything I have ever made fun of from a spiritual standpoint my entire life has always become the next thing that I have to dive into and explore. So something to think about there for all of us. Okay, so there's diet, there's the occult anatomies that he offers. When we're exploring the body, be still. If you stand, let's say you're going to do like a standing type of Qi Gong pose or something. I've gone through periods where, I mean, even to this day, sometimes I stand 4, 5, 6 hours. Different from how it used to be where I would set timers. I never set timers anymore. I tap into the energy and the exploration of the practice, and I am practiced for whatever period of time is within my ability to have the reservoirs of health for recovery. So sometimes this is, sessions that go for 6 hours, 7 hours, sometimes it's nighttime, sometimes it's daytime, the rhythms change. But in the past, I used to set timers, and, I would stand for 8 hours during a day if I was in retreat. And then the 4 of those would be like, okay, 1 4-hour session, food, take a little, lie down for a little bit, and then hour standing, hour Tai Chi form, 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 and then a walk, a couple hours of seated meditation, go to bed. That's like a pretty damn full day. So that's 8 hours of standing in a day, plus walking and moving, the form. That's another 4 hours there. That's a lot of time that you have to deal with the body. And this will awaken understandings, triangular type fractals upon fractals of balance, and points of reference that exist within and without of the body, and points of mind. There's so much that you can gain from these intense expressions of what we might look at in the beginning as disciplined practice. Is there value in this? Absolutely, especially for uncovering all kinds of minutiae of understanding of the body, of the mind's relationship with the body, the relationship with the energy. There's so much that can be done. You can also damage the bejesus out of yourself. So there's a time and a place for these very intense explorations of more of a fiery, disciplined approach. But it can do a lot of damage. So be careful, use discernment, and explore with, a type of interest, curiosity, and joy. That'll allow you to move through this type of stuff more easily. Okay, so also it will offer you an opportunity to look at what's offered in what Bardon calls the occult anatomy, and observe it. right? You'll be existing, your refinement of perception will be far more, far smaller than what he offers in this book. So it will allow you to perceive what he offers without it being looked at as, esoteric and something that just somebody said that is somehow unequivocally, whatever, true. So unequivocally, yeah, I think that's the word. So because your perceptions will be more refined, it'll allow you to perceive this stuff that is offered in a more balanced light when it comes to our own perceptions, okay? So then he looks at the physical material plane, physical world, the soul or the astral body and plane, and the spirit plane, planes of mind. Okay, so we're mental plane, so we're still looking at the intro to this book. Okay, now when we look at the physical material plane, this is where he starts looking or introducing the idea of the mineral, the plant, and the animal kingdoms. And he doesn't want to look into it too much because, well, there's a lot that you can find out on your own, and there's a lot that's, written in various books about it. Now, this particular exploration of the elements as they exist on each plane of existence, the physical plane, the astral plane, the mental plane, this opens us up to what he calls the tetrapolar magnet, which is literally the essence of this system, which is explored at each level, on each plane, and is, a big workings of the Kabbalah, is one of his following books, and evocational magic. The tetrapolar magnet is sort of at the essence of this whole system. And this tetrapolar magnet has to do with the principles of the elements, earth, water, fire, and air, forming and harmonizing in such a way that it opens up the potentials of the Akasha, which is the essence of the magical path. And through the Akasha, we are offered glimpses into, and over time, strong, clear, and deep resonance and tuning to a whole myriad of states of light, essentially, that are on and exist on and within the Akasha and through the Akasha, and are part of the Akashic paradox from a very refined space. So this exploration of the physical planes, the material worlds, this is where you can start with the body. This is where you can start with looking at the elements, fire, air, water, and earth within the body. Okay, this takes us over time into understanding of how to bring about sort of a manifestation types of potentials, because we understand how the energy works within the physical plane. Okay, now as we progress into the astral body, we start with the emotional type of explorations. This is where you have this relationship between emotions and ethical type standpoints. What feeling qualities do we have within the body? And how does this relate to the world around us? So this is looked at as the soul, okay? We have the electromagnetic fluid, and we have the what he looks at as the matrices, in this case the astral to physical matrix, this substance that binds the astral, the soul, into the body. And this is worthy of exploration. We want to be careful with this one. We don't want to be tinkering with it too much, because it's literally the soul and its connection to the body. Okay, so lots of exploration to be done, and he introduces this here. Now, when we look at the exploration of the elements within the astral, it is typically done in the beginning with the emotions. okay, positive, negative within each element. And as we harmonize the astral elements, this leads us into the Akasha. This leads us into a deeper understanding of this connection. And it offers potentials of grander understandings of intelligence and energy that link both the body and the entirety of the earth. The astral planes being to many of the beings, most of the beings that are included in the zone girdling the earth once you get to the evocational type work, what other esotericists refer to from anthroposophical societies and theosophical societies over the last couple hundred years as the ring pass not, right? And there is, the entire earth has a strong astral plane network. Now, in some systems, they will refer to this as the plane of the spirit. And they'll look at many of the intelligences of the zone girdling the earth, these astral planes, as of the spirit. And higher intelligences have certainly an expression through the astral planes, absolutely. Now, when you're working through the astral planes, this is where many of the earth-based teachers are found. So when you're working with the zone girdling the earth, as you get through the higher texts of this particular author's system, this is where you get beings that have a very strong expression through the physical and the astral energies and the mental energies of the person themselves. So for learning skills, for bringing stuff into form, the energy is particularly strong when it comes to its formful expression. Okay, and this is generally due to a strong relationship with the astral, with the soul, as it is a type of point of pivot or communicator between higher explorations and understanding of spirit and the lower understandings and formful expressions of the body, etc. So when we're working with the astral planes, this is where you get interesting work with type of mediumships, where the dead type go, where after this physical plane, where certain amalgamations of energy and identity might find that they continue to exist. So this is all within the astral planes. Now there's a tremendous amount of work to be done in the astral planes. Very often in spiritual explorations, or spiritual paths, the exploration of the elements from the physical material plane and from the astral planes will be looked at as pointless or as delusions, the plane of delusion, because it is of dualistic nature. And while this is true, if we ignore this, we are essentially ignoring a massive part of ourselves. And this is where you get some interesting types of mental blocks when it comes to higher end spiritual practitioners, is that this is an aspect of us. If you are one with everything, that includes duality, right? It does not preclude one from being a part of duality. So an exploration of the astral planes in all its beings, in terms of dream work, this is the plane where dreams are carried out, and in terms of our cultivation of the astral form, right? The balancing of the elements, higher vibrational form of astral function. This becomes really, really important, because it is through this that the higher energies pressurize and pass and find their way into physical expression. So if we have not cultivated, and this is where Bardon gets into the black and white mirror later on in this book, we'll get to that as we get to steps, I think it's 2 and 3 in this book. As you start to get into the black and white mirror and the evolution of the emotional nature. This allows for profound work to occur more deeply. This also acts as a very strong protective mechanism to darker forces that want to throw you off the path. This is where you get to I think in the Egyptian god is Anubis, the weighing of the soul, right? The weighing of the heart as a physical sort of expression of the soul. And this is where we lighten our load, we lighten our heart. We find a lighter astral nature that is in more resonance with light. Hence the repetition of the word light and enlightening as we cultivate a more refined emotional makeup and astral makeup. And you will start to perceive very clear energetic distinctions between dense emotional energies and activity and energies, emotions that are in more resonance with light. This will become very, very clear as time goes on. So lots of work to be done in the astral planes, not to be ignored. Okay, that brings us into the mental planes and bodies, sometimes also the spirit planes and bodies. This takes us right, honestly, to the end of the book here when we talk about the divine attributes at the end of this book of omnipotence, omniscience, all-lovingness, and omnipresence. And those qualities are delved into right in the introduction. Okay, these what they call in this book the ennobling of the spirit, the refining of the spirit. Of the astral makeup. Okay, so the spirit will reticulate through the astral expressions, the personality. So this ennobling process is a process of refinement and of enlightenment, of the lightening of the soul. And this brings us into the mental bodies, this transition point between a non-form and form. Where do ideas come from? From the Akasha. Once again, the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether Akasha, are in existence on each plane. The material, the astral, the mental, etc. So very often the elements are reduced to something that exists only on the emotional plane. Okay, but they exist on all planes. And as your perceptions refine through training, through practice, you'll start to perceive the energy of thought as a very coarse expression of mind substance. So all thought comes out of non-thought, and then that particular essence of energy, that Akashic essence, will reticulate and blossom into a type of form of the mind and mental function through the mental body. This will then have the opportunity through the mental astral matrix to move through into the astral energies and feeling expressions of the body, and then into form itself, where we start getting into the actual chemical changes and then as expressed out into the environment. So lots of work to be done on the mind and a perception. What you might look at from a Buddhist standpoint is view, right? View. Because how we perceive things in the mental body will alter and change the astral makeup. Okay? And this is where we get into further cultivation of this thing. It's very common, this thing that's us, it's very common when we start pursuing magical paths or spiritual paths that work with energy use, that we stop or set aside the importance of the cultivation of this thing that's us, cultivation of the mind makeup itself, of the thoughts that we have, of the emotions that we have. This is so important to higher work. So we want to make sure we don't ignore that. So even mentioned here in this intro are beings of the elements, qualities of the elements when it comes to the mental expression, the spiritual expression. There's a discussion of religion in this introduction. And this is important, very important, because this leads us into the chat here about freedom. Okay, so the religion side of things, where we become, missionaries for different types of expression. There are reflections to and truths within all systems. There are also faults within all systems, blind spots and holes within all systems. So part of this particular type of exploration, when we move, this is an initiation. Initial is first, right? We write our initials. Initials are to the first, right? And the initial or initiation is the transition typically between the disciple mindset, which lives within boundaries of disciplines, right? And of systems and forms of systems, which get often deified, and there's all kinds of religious type of stuff that blossoms out of that. This is religious thinking, which is dual, from where most people are going to be accessing those particular systems from. But the initiation is the movement from the disciple, the disciplined, formful, systemized mindset, to the initiate, which is an exploration from a space of freedom. This is very important. This is an initiation into Hermetics, not as Hermetics as a system. A lot of people will attach to it, but Hermetics as a expression of freedom. So forget the name Hermetics, right? And look at it as merely freedom. You are being exposed to tools for a free growth and education towards being an expression of the sovereign, autonomous God-man, as mentioned in this book, or enlightened human, okay? That interplay between sovereignty and unity. Unity with, to reference from this book, the divine providence, divine light, the divine human, the light human, the hue of light as it expresses through the man. You unify with that as it expresses through the human. And this allows for a sovereign, autonomous expression of that light. So in this discussion of religion, he mentions a few different religions, and those are fine. There is some stuff there, but it makes some very clear points here about moving beyond the point of religion, using the good aspects of any religious system and discarding that which is not useful. He also makes a very clear point, which I would say most people who get into this work will not really see when they look at it, because it requires a degree of evolution to understand the value in this, which is to not degrade anybody who is in a particular spectrum of their own development and wrapped up in a particular religion, wrapped up in a particular spiritual system, in a particular systematized form or scaffolding, which acts as a lifeboat for a period of time during an individual's evolution. As you keep progressing through this work, you will start to see the necessities for different developmental stages. And you you cannot degrade that. That's really, really common. Really, really common. So even in the very beginning of this book, the openness of mind. Now, if you jump onto any Hermetics forum or any Taoist forum or really any forum of anything, you will find a like 99% plus of everything that's said is from the perspective of we're the best, I'm the best, this system's the best. And we need that at a point in development to continue on. Because why do we continue on with something that we don't think is of high value? But that particular might look at it as like a mental dysfunction. This particular need starts to dissolve over time, but that doesn't mean it has to be gone immediately, or because sometimes its presence is a necessity for the individual to continue on a path to a point where the next cycle of that evolution will open up, and then boom, there's another stage and another stage and another stage. So that's a really important part of this, which is often ignored, is the non-imposition of one's own development or one's own understanding onto other expressions and spectrums of development. Okay, so that's in the religion section, and it's a really, really important thing to maintain in our awareness. Okay, then there is an expression or exploration briefly on the topic of God in the introduction here, and looking at mysticism and looking at sort of the magician versus the mystic. Okay, let's see. Okay, and sort of moving beyond these. Now, terminology is terminology. Okay, we want to explore the coarse nature of the material and astral planes. We want to explore the more refined nature of the mental planes, and we want to look at the dissolution, right? The dissolution of the thing that is on the path itself, as well as the dissolution of the path. This is all part of the progression. And so when you're working with all this stuff, there's some descriptions of beings and demons and gods and deities. These are all part of the path that opens up to us as we progress. And as the fractal that the identity is connected into keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and expanding to greater swaths of the cosmos and to greater intuitions of cosmic lawfulness and expression, this alters what all of these words or preconceived connotations might mean. So we really need to be open to that. Okay, that's one of the big parts of this. So he looks here at different initiations and some different names here. So a pure mystic and an approach to the divine through all-encompassing love, right? Other aspects of connection with the divine through will and love, will, and wisdom, essentially. Okay, so this would be, if you look at it, the four bases of supernatural power: will to the fire element, wisdom to the air element, right, and love to the water element. So these then come together and are manifested through the earth element, and this is where you get into the consciousness or the particular fractal of I identity that is associated with at any given time, which of course it can change. That fractal can change, and that is where you get into the tetragrammation type process. Again, the harmony and constant evolution, spherical evolution of the elements as they express in all the levels. Okay, so this is again a look at the divine attributes, and that is in the section on God and divinity. And this is, again, the introduction to this book. There's so much value in it to look through. And then once you've practiced and you've had a lot of time spent in your own study, your own explorations and deep, tangible, real meditations, then you go through this again and again and again, and it'll mean more. As any good book is written in the manner of a scroll, something that you can return to and understand from higher and higher places of understanding and of development. The last section, I believe it's the last section here, yep, of this introduction is on asceticism. Okay, and this is split, of course, into asceticism from the standpoint of the mental, the astral, and the physical. So having a type of choicefulness towards how we think, how we feel, how we act. What are the thoughts that we choose to allow to grow in the mind? What are the feelings that we allow to propagate, the emotions within the body and in the field? And of course, the material asceticism, what do we eat? Sex in terms of what do we withdraw from the physical world? How do we engage with food? How do we engage with sex? How do we engage with interpersonal dynamics? How do we engage with emotional contact, with emotional energy from others, with mental form and thought and framework for in ourselves and our culture, etc. And looking into that and taking breaks from that as we need to. So this mentions, of course, all religions and all sects and spiritual explorations has asceticism as a part of it at different stages. And this allows us to really perceive the importance of, or the power that those particular things that we choose to set aside for periods of time might have on us. So it also provides great value when it comes to our own development on the path, our own expressions, right? So let's say you do a silent retreat, a silent meditation retreat. You're not allowed to look at anybody. You're not allowed to talk to anybody, right? Which means you can't communicate. You can't write anything to anybody, okay? So if you can't look at anybody or communicate with the senses that we're used to communicating with, then you start to find that you perceive others through different senses. You start to feel into others. You start to feel into the location of someone's mind, the space that the mind might be occupying, where the attention might be of different individuals. Is the attention wavering, etc.? You'll start being able to read body language because you're looking for ways to communicate because the ones that are habitual to us have been taken from us. Now, when those habitual methods of communication are returned, we're allowed eye contact, we're allowed to speak, you realize the power within eye contact, the energy within looking at something with the eyes, the visual out, so to speak, is profoundly powerful. And you realize the use of words, the energy that it takes to form thought, to form words, to express. It's a monumental amount of energy. And it's a very, very common expression from people who've just done a silent retreat, that when they get back to talking, how exhausting it is, right? How much energy it consumes. And there's other values here too, say in silence, is that you can't engage in egoistic chatter. You can't vent your what you're going through as you're releasing. You can't vent to other people through negative expressions. You can't talk shit, right? Which is going to create hardness within you, and it's going to inhibit your own growth. So it acts as a safety mechanism for the individual's own growth, because you can't express your own static through normal means. So you have to start dealing with it closer to its source, closer to the energy makeups behind it, to the perspectives of mind and of ego and identity and of self that are the lens through which these desired expressions of static want to move. So you have to deal with that. So there's a lot of value in asceticism from different standpoints. Say in fasting, like just from food in general. Maybe you fast for a few days and you start to realize how much of our habits are based off of eating, right? Mental habits, how we hide from ourselves through food, or through any other activity. So it could be looking at a nice view out a window. There's very, of course, positive things about nature and going out in nature. And if we go and hide in a cave, this will augment how much benefit there is in being out in nature if we hide in a room. A cave's a little different than hiding in a room in terms of the density and the compression of the air and the type of silence and the intelligence within the stone. Different from being in a room, man-made room. But the point is the same in terms of asceticism and what it can offer. Now, that doesn't mean that you deprive yourself of harmony. Okay? Like we mentioned earlier in this video, some explorations, when it comes to activity, require different types of sustenance to refuel and replenish those reserves, those reservoirs of substance. So abstaining from food and abstaining from water and liquids can have a lot of value in teaching us different lessons. However, unless we are, a Himalayan monk who's meditating 24 hours a day for 50 years, there's plenty of stories of those folks who eat a little bit once a week and are sustained through light. This is very, very high practice. Or I've heard of one guy who has, I think, 3 berries a day and some water or some milk or something like that. And then the rest of the nourishment comes from the densification of light and energy as it passes through and is absorbed and densified into physical substance. This is where you get substances like amrita that are nourishing agents. So asceticism has lots of value. I've mentioned a few things. He mentioned some other things here. Using food to balance and harmonize ailments of the body. Of course, this is important, using thought and emotion. Imbalance and negativity will spread through into the physical, so you really got to look at that. Not thinking negative, harmful things, not feeling negative, harmful things. Do this in an honest development and exploration so you don't end up lying to yourself and just creating a little shell of positivity around a bunch of negativity. Allow for the alchemical process to dissolve and transform the negativity and the density and refine this so that you are in resonance with higher vibration, essentially. Okay? I think that's basically everything here. Morality, he talks about ennobling of the soul and the spirit. Morality, this is, as we get to more and more expansive states of consciousness, what is moral, what is good, what is bad, starts to become a little different. So we can't take higher understanding or more expansive understanding and try to express it from a space, an egoistic space or a dualistic space or a layer or level of cultivation that hasn't touched it, or else you get people engaging in very negative actions from with no connection to higher through paths. This gets where things get weird, and you get people who will express things like, I bring out, and I'm sure we've all spent time with people like this who take a lot of pride in pressurizing people's pain, and they will make excuses for that by suggesting that they're existing of such a high vibration that you can't handle being around them, and that's their path. And those are usually really, really bad teachers who have a lot of pride in being right, and will try to create a dichotomy either through questions or through however they're choosing to do this, trying to find your pain essentially and bring it to the surface. And they say, oh, this is so you can deal with it. Personally, I think this is a really crappy teacher. The goal, if you're working with initiates, is to free people. And in order to do that, you have to have a much longer view. So you make it easy for the freedom to exist and for that static to move, okay? As opposed to putting constraints and impositions to increase the pressure of that static, and then go, see, you're wrong, your path forward is through me, you're welcome. That's how you create followers, and that's how you create cults, is through making yourself the path through which evolution occurs. This is, in my opinion, at least currently, incredibly rude. Now, when you're looking from the perspective of a long question or a long curiosity when it comes to someone's path and openness to it, there are stages in which students might have a lot of agitation towards a teacher. This shouldn't be from the place of the teacher having done anything to the student. This is typically an expression of the evolution of the student to move beyond their own mental constraints when it comes to having subjugated themselves through most often their own relationship to the figure of a teacher. Okay? And a good teacher does their very best to alleviate any differentiation or hierarchy when it comes to authority. Students who exist at a denser level will be attracted to teachers who teach at a denser level. So a student who is existing from a certain place will be very attracted to a teacher who tells them exactly what to do. And they will be in awe of that, and they will express the amazing nature of that teacher for that very reason, that the teacher tells them exactly what to do. However, every lesson from a teacher, right? Every teaching that comes through the method of telling somebody exactly the next thing to do or what the right way is a thorn, to borrow from Rummy, that's being used to remove another thorn. And that's one of the most simple and beautiful ways I've heard to describe it. Every teaching is a thorn used to remove another thorn, meaning that it is another thorn, we'll change that to form, it's another shape that is casting a type of density and a limitation that the student will have to move through at some point. Okay? So to summarize this entire process of initiation, of which this book is titled, go through it. Enjoy it. There's a lot of stuff in this introduction. Have fun with the exercises. Explore it. Explore the recesses of your own mind, your own heart, your own soul, your spirit, your relationships with divinity, with light, with cosmic akasha, this God substance, everything that can be, this potential. Explore it. However, be wary of creating your own thorns and deifying the new thorn, and vilifying the old thorn that you managed to pop out. Okay? It is a constant path, a constant evolution. So work with whatever the system might be from the perspective of the initiate, of the first, the one, the perspective of freedom, from the perspective of freedom, of sovereignty, through ultimate unification. Okay, so this was a walkthrough of the introduction to Franz Bardon's initiation into Hermetics, a great book. I hope you benefited from this and enjoyed it. If you're interested in training with me, there are online courses which you can find here in the links underneath in the website. I also teach private coaching sessions online via video. If I happen to be in the neighborhood, we can do that in person, but most of my students are international, all over the globe, so we use video call. And lastly, I have coming up in June 2025 an initiation. This is a spiritual attunement retreat, a spiritual attunement initiation, levels 1 and 2. This is a 16-day process, and the details are available also on the website there. We'll be exploring a lot of the work here in Initiation into Hermetics from the perspective of spiritual attunements and unification with light frequency, etc. So a lot of fun stuff in there. Take a look at the page on the website. All right, thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be continuing in future podcasts when I don't have a guest to explore the rest of the steps of this book, as well as other texts as well. Just some fun things to do to intersperse with the interviews and the conversations with other Zany practicers. All right, thanks for your time. Practice. Bye.